My babe alleged me in the average of the night. Dad, I'm at the brand station. My stepfather exhausted me, but now he's cogent them that I attacked him. They accept him. Aback I accustomed at the station, the administrator on assignment, angry, pale, and abashed, said, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Before we continue, don't forget to address in the comments which country you're from and how old you are. Enjoy listening. The buzz rang at 3:17 a.m. on a Thursday in backward October. The affectionate of night aback the air is aciculate abundant to cut bottle, and the moon hangs low like a warning. I was already bisected awake, the way parents abstruse to be when their accouchement know best alive beneath the aforementioned roof. Aback every brook in the abode could be a clip or a heartbeat. The ringtone was Emily's admired pop song, Sunflower Skies by Nova Ray, slowed to an addictive piano adaptation she'd set years ago aback when she was 15, and assertive the apple would end if her playlist wasn't perfect. My hand began the buzz in the dark, thumb's annexation afore my eyes adapted to the screen. The edition ID glowed. Emmy Bear. Dad, she whispered, articulation abashed like a brand bent in a storm, barely audible over what articulate like beaming lights active in the background. I'm at the brand station. My stepfather exhausted me, but now he's cogent them that I attacked him. They believe him. The words hit like ice-baptized caked beeline into my veins. Abominable every nerve awake. I was already affairs on jeans, one-handed, the buzz apprenticed to my ear with my shoulder. Breach calm, Em, I'm coming. Don't say addition chat until I'm there. Not one. Do you apprehend me? I tried to action back, but he's bigger. And the officers? They looked at me like I was the problem. A sob bankrupt through, raw and ragged. There's claret on my hoodie, Dad. My hoodie. Please hurry. The band went dead. I stared at the screen. In am, afresh, effective my keys, wallet, and the old accoutrement anorak I hadn't exhausted aback the academy. The one with the frayed cuffs and the abreast aroma of gun oil still trapped in the lining. My barter roared to activity afore I alike bankrupt the door. The drive to the Midtown Belt took 23 annual on abandoned streets, though every red ablaze acquainted like acclaimed insult, every adumbration on the alley a taunt. My apperception raced faster than the engine. Richard. Of course it was Richard. Lisa's bedmate of 4 years, the man who'd swept in with smooth stories, big-ticket watches, and a beam that never absolutely accomplished his eyes. He'd once told me straight-faced that Emily was activity through a appearance aback she came home with a C in algebra. I'd capital to accept Lisa aback she said he was good for them, acceptable for her. I'd capital my babe to accept a abiding home while I worked bifold accoutrement at the Aegis firm, while I told myself retirement meant peace. What a fool I'd been. The station's beaming afterglow agitated assimilate the wet pavement like a abomination arena in reverse, acrid and unforgiving. I anchored Aji beyond 2 spaces. Didn't care. Central the air smelled of burnt coffee, bleach, and something metallic underneath. Blood, fear, or both. Baker Mallory glanced up from the desk, accustomed me. Harlan, retired detective, brand 4729, still in the system, and coiled me through afterwards a word, her eyes flicking to the captivation breadth with something like pity. Emily sat on a metal bank in the corner, knees drawn to her chest, one wrist cuffed to the corruption with an artificial zip tie that had already cut red curve into her skin. A abrasion the blush of accomplished asset bloomed across her larboard cheekbone, overextension adjoin her temple like agitated ink. Her right eye was abscessed shut, the lid aloof and shiny. Broiled claret crusted above her countenance in an asperous line. She wore the aforementioned colossal hoodie she'd stolen from my closet after most summer, fleet blue, acreage of dad, achromatic beyond the chest, now burst at the sleeve and decrepit aphotic at the collar. Aback she saw me, her face crumpled, and she approved to stand, but the belt jerked her back. Across the allowance stood Richard Lang, 6'2", broad-shouldered, expensive crew charge aloof abundant to attending victimized like he'd apposited in a mirror. His lower lip was split. A attenuate band of claret broiled at the corner, and a bank blemish ran forth his jaw. He leaned to join the counter, arms folded, cutting the aforementioned bisected beam he'd flashed at our aftermost ancestors' barbecue, when he'd jokingly told Emily to smile added, because appealing girls don't scowl. He wore a tailored charcoal accoutrement over a white shirt now blood-soaked with what could accept been her claret or his. Hard to acquaint beneath the lights. A adolescent administrator approached me. Brand Annual J. Carter, Aboriginal 20s, baby-faced, Adam's apple bobbing like he'd swallowed a marble, his face drained of blush the moment our eyes met, anemic as printer paper. He fumbled with his clipboard, nearly dropping it, affidavit Ariel like abashed birds. "Mr. Heron?" he stammered, articulation awry on the additional syllable. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." Didn't apperceive what? That I was her father. That I'd spent 22 years putting men like Richard abaft bars. That I still had a company in every belt from actuality to the Canton line. A company who owed me favors earlier than this kid was. Carter led me accomplish the board adjoin a side office, his boots squeaking on the linoleum. Richard straightened, smirk faltering for bisected a additional afore snapping a back into place. Emily Ariel her head, eyes advanced with something between achievement and terror. Achievement that I could fix this. Alarm that I couldn't. Another officer, Ramirez. I accustomed her from the academy. Sharp eyes, no-nonsense braid stood nearby, accoutrements crossed, watching Richard like he was a doubtable already, not a victim. "Cut the zip tie," I said quietly. My voice flat, abundant to cut steel. Carter hesitated, casual at his sergeant. "Sir, there's agreement now." Ramirez stepped forward, produced a small blade, and burst the artificial in one motion. Emily rubbed her wrist. Red welts ambit the cartilage like a armlet of fire. Afresh ran to me. Her accomplished body shook. Shoulders, hands, knees. I captivated her at accoutrements length, scanning every mark beneath the acrid lights. Finger-shaped bruises belted her upper arms like addition had approved to drove her bones. A cut aloft her countenance had crusted over, but beginning claret still seeped at the edge. Her lip was breech in 2 places. She smelled of fear, copper, and the abreast boilerplate anatomy aerosol she'd exhausted a back-average school. Richard cleared his throat, articulation bland as oil caked over burst glass. She came at me with a kitchen knife, Heron. I was arresting myself, attending at my face, attending at my arms, she aching me abysmal abundant to scar. Emily's voice cracked like attenuate ice. He effective me by the hair. Dad airtight my face into the marble adverse 3 times. I never affected a knife. I was aggravating to get to the door. Carter's boring darted amid us. Diaphoresis assault on his forehead admitting the air conditioning bustling like a dying fridge. He pulled me abreast into the attenuated alley that smelled of mildew and old paperwork, blurred his articulation to a artful whisper. "Mr. Heron, your daughter's buzz recorded the absolute incident. Audio only. She charge except hit almanac aback, she dialed 911. We listened. It doesn't bout Mr. Lang's statement. Not alike close." Richard's face twitched, a muscle jumping in his jaw. That could be edited. Kids these days. AI apps, deepfakes. Carter abandoned him, eyes flicking to the one-way bottle area Ramirez now stood guard. "There's more. The 911 call. Your stepdaughter fabricated it at 11:47 p.m., she said ablaze as day. He's affliction me. Please hurry. He won't stop." A crash, a scream, and the band went dead. "We accept the timestamp." Lang claimed she dialed by blow while advancing him. Said she was hysterical. I looked at Richard. The beam was gone, replaced by article colder. Calculation. The attending of a man recalculating odds, Carter continued, articulation almost aloft a whisper now, like he was abashed the walls were listening. Aback we ran background. Lang's prior popped up like weeds. 3 calm complaints in 2 states, Ohio, Nevada, bankrupt adolescent records, but still there if you apperceive area to look. 1 complexy adherent who abandoned accuse afterwards, he apologized. "And sir, your name triggered a banderole in the system. You're the detective who put his brother abroad 15 years ago. Armed robbery, gas and go on Eth and Mercer." Tommy Lang swore animus in accessible court. Said he'd accomplish Harlan pay for every year. The alley tilted. I remembered the case like it was austere into my retinas. Tommy Lang, 22, wild-eyed, bent on chapped surveillance pistol whipping a clerk for $43 and a backpack of Marlboro. I'd testified for 3 hours, absolved the jury through the band anatomy by frame. Tommy got 25 years. Richard had been 17 then, sitting in the arcade in a too-big suit, staring acrimony through me. I'd abandoned his face until this moment, until it wore the aforementioned hatred aged into article able and poisonous. Richard's eyes narrowed to slits. Coincidence. Ancient history. You can't prove. Carter wasn't done. He pulled out his tablet, swiped to a still image. We pulled the security cam from the accommodation hallway. Building C, 3rd floor, shows Lang dragging your babe central by the arm at 11:42 p.m., no knife in her hand. She's fighting, aggravating to cull away. Afresh the lights go out. Addition flip the breaker. 43 abnormal later, she stumbles out alone, bleeding. hoodie half off one shoulder, calling 911 from the pay buzz downstairs. The cool accepted the pay buzz works. He activated it himself at 11:50 p.m. because he heard the sirens. Emily active her face in my shoulder, her tears assimilation through my shirt. I thought no one would accept me. Mom's on that business cruise in Denver. He said he'd acquaint anybody I was crazy, aloof like he told her I was lying about the abate stuff. The yelling, the shoving, the way he'd grab my wrist so adamantine it larboard marks beneath my continued sleeves. He said if I told he'd accomplish abiding, I concluded up in advance care. Richard took a step back, accoutrement rustling. Ramirez confused to block the exit. Duke comatose on her holster with accomplished ease. Carter angry to him. Articulation abiding now. All traces of falter gone. Richard Lang, you're beneath arrest for assault in the additional degree, filing a apocryphal report, attestant intimidation, and destruction of evidence. Richard lunged, not at the officers, but at Emily, a glottal complete artifice his throat. I confused faster. 22 years of muscle anamnesis, blame in. Except blockage him into the cinder block bank with a bang that echoed like a gunshot. His arch airtight back, eyes rolling, handcuffs airtight on before he could recover. Animate this time, not plastic. Ramirez apprehend him his rights in a calm, clipped accent, while he argument blame at the floor, at me, at the universe. As they led him away, he shouted over his shoulder, articulation arise with rage. This isn't over, Harlan. You'll see. I'll coffin you. Carter removed his hat, abrading his buzz-cut head, cheeks ablaze with shame. I owe you both an apology. I took the stepfather's adventure at face value. Pretty girl in a hoodie, rich stepdad with a breech lip. History of boyhood rebellion. I bought it hook, line, and sinker. I alike wrote accessible aegis in the initial report. Won't appear again. I've already alleged the watch commander. We're aperture and centralized analysis, and I'm volunteering for the training panel. Emily's fingers anchored about mine, nails digging bow-shaped into my skin. Can we go home? Not yet, I said, articulation softer now. House first. Photos, statements, the works. We do this right. M. Every bruise, every cut, we document it all. In the ER, the nurses confused with quiet ability beneath lights bright abundant to alter souls. They accurate every abrasion in high definition. The cheekbone abrasion overextension like a storm cloud. The split lip with the accessory of bark blind loose. The fingerprint welts on her accoutrements in perfect ovals. The earlier chicken blooming marks on her ribs that fabricated the nurse's jaw bind into a adamantine line. A amusing artisan called Marisol, mid-40s, kind eyes, clipboard like a shield, took Emily's abounding annual abaft a curtain while I stood outside. Fists clenched so adamantine my duke absurd like ice on a pond. Aback they finished. The doctor, a woman with animate gray beard and a voice like balmy tea, pulled me abreast in the aisle that smelled of antibacterial and despair. Old fractures, she said quietly, glancing at the chart. Healed wrist from about 6 months ago. Hairline crack in 2 ribs. 3 months, maybe 4. This wasn't the aboriginal time. We're required to address doubtable advancing corruption to CPS and the DA. She'll need follow-up with an agony specialist. Acerbity boiled, hot and black, but I swallowed it like absinthian medicine. Emily bare me steady, not reckless. Not the cop who'd already kicked in a aperture afterwards a warrant. Not the ancestor who capital to coursing Richard bottomward in lockup. Back at my house, 2-story brick on Maple Lane. Quiet street. The one Lisa had larboard aback we afar 8 years ago. We sat on the balustrade exhausted that creaked like an old friend. Dawn painted the sky lavender and peach, the aboriginal ablaze communicable on the frost that glittered on the grass. Emily sipped hot amber from her old anachronistic mug, the green one with the absurd handle, absolute about her amateur like a cape. The abrasion on her audacity looked worse in daylight, amethyst bleeding into blue. I should accept told you sooner, she whispered, beef crimper from the mug. About the yelling, the way he'd corner me in the kitchen aback Mom was in the shower. How he'd say, your mom works hard. Don't accent her with your drama. I thought, if I aloof backward quiet until college, until I angry 18 in 2 years. I put an arm about her, accurate of the bruises. You're safe now. That's what matters. And you're never activity back there. Not ever. My buzz bashed on the railing. A argument from Lisa. Just landed at Den. Connecting flight delayed 3 hours. What's activity on? Richard's not answering. Emily's buzz goes to voicemail. I'm worried. Then addition 30 abnormal later. Alarm me now. I showed Emily. She bit her lip, wincing aback at breach accessible again. A bean of blood arising up. Mom's activity to freak. She thinks I'm overreacting. She always says I'm sensitive. Let her freak. I said she needs to know who she married. And you're not sensitive. You're surviving. Lisa arrived at noon, eyes billowy from errant on the plane. Beard in a blowsy bun, she hadn't exhausted a back our academy canicule, a back we'd breach up all-night belief for finals. She abandoned her attaché in the driveway, auto still spinning, and ran to Emily, adhering her so adamantine I thought the ribs the doctor warned about ability able again. Emily stiffened at first, arms blind limp, afresh melted, face crumpling into her mom's shoulder. "I'm so sorry, baby," Lisa kept saying. Articulation deadened in Emily's hair. "I'm so sorry. I should accept seen. I should accept listened." Richard's band audition was set for Monday. The DA, Monica Alvarez, a woman I'd formed with years ago on a court of home invasions, was blame no bond, citation flight risk, the animus angle, and the abundance of evidence. Lisa sat at my kitchen table. Aforementioned oak table area Emily had done appointment aback she was 6, agia tissue into knots until it shredded. He said Emily was apperception things. She said, articulation breaking like glass underfoot, that she was anxious of our marriage, that she'd been acting out, skipping class, cheating out with a company I'd never met. I dedicated him. I thought anticipation I was attention our family. She looked at Emily, eyes swimming. How did I absence this? How did I let him argue me you were the problem? Emily reached across, affecting her mom's duke with fingers still swollen. You didn't absence it. He hid it from both of us. He'd delay until you were in the shower or on a assignment alarm or asleep. He'd smile for you. Then she trailed off, shrugging, the motion baby and painful. He'd say things like, your dad larboard because you're too much. I started believing him. Lisa sobbed then, a complete that tore through the allowance like a blade. I got her water, sat it bottomward untouched. Emily patted her aback with the awkward amore of an adolescent abating a parent. Over the abutting weeks, the case unraveled Richard completely, cilia by thread until he was naked afore the law. Neighbors came forward. 1. Mrs. Delgado from 3B remembered audition screams and a bang that befuddled her ceiling. Anticipation, it was the TV until she saw Emily awkward to the bus stop the abutting morning, hoodie pulled low. Another, a academy kid from 2A, had footage on his Ring camera. Richard carrying a Atramentis toolbox at 12:03 a.m., casual about like he knew area the blind spots were. The accommodation super, Mr. Patel began the missing kitchen knife in that aforementioned toolbox, hidden abaft acrylic cans, wiped clean, but with Emily's claret in the groove. Lab-accepted DNA bout oral hours. The building's laundry allowance camera bent Richard administration of Emily's. Burst hoodie sleeve in the dumpster at 12:17 a.m. The sleeve with her claret and his bark beef beneath the fingernails she'd aching him with in self-defense. The hoodie itself was recovered, bagged, tagged, beatific to evidence. Tommy Lang, Richard's brother, a like beatific a letter from prison, forwarded by the DA, postmarked from Ironwood State. A quaint Harlan. I'm sorry. Little brother consistently had a temper. Anticipation he'd grown out of it afterwards juvie. Didn't apperceive he'd go afterwards a kid. If I'd been out, I'd have chock-full him myself. Acquaint the babe, she's stronger than both of us. Richard took a plea. 7 years, no acquittal for 5. Additional abiding abstinent order that covered Emily, Lisa, and me by extension. Lisa filed for annulment the aforementioned week, served him in Canton alcove through an agent who knew me from the old days. She confused into the additional bedchamber bottomward the anteroom from Emily. Said she couldn't go back to that apartment, alike if it was acclimatized by a dozen priests. Emily confused in with me permanently. We turned the bedfellow allowance into her amplitude over a continued weekend. Cord lights draped like constellations beyond the ceiling. A board by the window overlooking the maple tree that abandoned helicopter seeds every spring. Posters of bands she admired taped crookedly, because she insisted on accomplishing it herself. She corrected the walls a soft sage green, the blush of new leaves, and afraid a corkboard area she affianced debate trophies, academy brochures, and a book out of the Harland Agreement training flyer. Some nights she woke screaming, thrashing, adjoin nightmares where Richards easily were about her throat. I'd sit on the attic beside her bed, back adjoin the wall, until her breath counterbalanced out, and the cord lights corrective bendable galaxies on her face. We developed a system. 3 knocks on the wall. If she bare me, no questions asked. I'd beating a back twice. I'm here. One evening, 4 months afterwards the arrest, we were bistro pizza on the active allowance floor, boxes accessible like a picnic on the exhausted Persian rug Lisa had larboard behind. Grease decrepit the carpet. Neither of us cared. Emily circling through her phone. Afresh looked up, eyes ablaze, admitting the faint scar that now bisected her eyebrow. Dad, bethink Administrator Carter? He messaged me on the Precincts Association page. Said because of what happened. The department's starting binding training on calm calls citywide. Their application our case anonymous, but still they're calling it the Harlan Protocol. It covers audio evidence, alley cams, old fractures, everything. I aloft an eyebrow, chewing pepperoni. Kid, you aloof afflicted action for 4,000 officers. She smiled. The aboriginal absolute one in forever. The affectionate that accomplished her eyes and channeled the corners. We afflicted it. You believed me first. Lisa appeared in the aperture captivation, a basin of air-headed, acclimatized with the truffle alkali sheet apparent on a work trip. Movie night. I vote for that one with the talking raccoon. Emily groaned, dramatic. Mom, we've apparent it 12 times. 13's the charm, and I brought added cheese. Outside, the aboriginal snow of the season began to fall. Soft, quiet. Accoutrement the apple in apple pie white. Emily opened the window a crack. Absolution algid air kiss our faces. Snowflakes broiled on her eyelashes like tiny stars. Anticipate we'll be okay? She asked. Articulation baby, but steady. The catechism she'd asked 100 times aback that night. I pulled her close. Lisa axle in on the added ancillary until we were a circuitous abundance of blankets and limbs and laughter. Better than okay. We're adamantine now. And for the aboriginal time in years, I believed it. But belief like ours don't end tidy. They stretch, fray, reweave themselves into articles stronger. 6 months later, Emily started therapy twice a anniversary with Dr. Singh, a agony specialist who wore ablaze scarves and never rushed her. She'd appear home quiet some days, abstraction, in a leather-bound anthology she wouldn't let me see. Other days she'd apprentice through the aperture announcement she'd aced a physics analysis, or that the Academy bi-weekly capital her to write an op-ed on boyhood advocacy. She abutting the agitation team, wore her bruises like badges until they faded. Afresh wore her articulation like armor. Her first tournament, she took additional abode arguing for binding brainy bloom days in schools. The bays sits on her desk, communicable the cord lights. Lisa sold the apartment, acclimated the money to pay for Emily's academy armamentarium, and a bottomward payment on a little abode 2 streets over. Chicken siding, wraparound porch, a kitchen big abundant for Sunday pancakes. She and I abstruse to co-parent without the old bitterness. Scheduled dinners, aggregate Google calendars, the works. Some nights she'd breach for coffee afterwards, bottomward Emily off, and we'd allocution about aggregate except Richard, her new job at the business firm, my Aegis consulting gigs, the way Emily's laugh had alternate louder than before. Carter, the adolescent officer, showed up at our door one Saturday with a box of donuts and a abashed beam that hadn't changed. Training's rolling out citywide, he said, alive from bottom to foot. Wanted to say acknowledgement in person. And my sister's in a bad situation. Your babe gave me the adventuresomeness to advise her leave. She's safe now. Emily hugged him so adamantine his hat fell off, rolling beyond the balustrade like a tumbleweed. Lisa took a photo. Carter red-faced. Emily grinning. Me assuming to abuse them for authoritative a mess. A year afterwards, the arrest. Emily, angry 18. We threw a affair in the backyard. Cord lights alloyed through the maple branches, altered lawn chairs, a playlist she curated herself with songs that fabricated Lisa beef and me pretend to hate. Bisected the agitation aggregation showed up. Additional Lisa's co-workers. Even Ramirez from the belt-cutting jeans instead of her uniform. Carter brought his sister, Marissa, who clung to Emily like a lifeline, whispering, "Thanks for the crisis hotline Cardinal Emily had texted her at 2 a.m. One night. At dusk, Emily pulled me abreast to the maple tree, its leaves aloof starting to turn. She captivated a baby board box sanded smooth, accessible it. Central was a keychain, a tiny argent brand engraved with Harland Agreement in tiny calligraphy on the back. For the ones who accept us. I had it made, she said, eyes shining. For you. For every kid who's afraid to speak. For every administrator who learns to listen. I abrupted it to my keys that night. It's still there, clinking against the barter key every morning. Richard approved to address his book 6 months in, claiming new evidence. A attestant who said Emily had a history of violence. The address died in committee. Too abundant documentation, too many witnesses, too abounding cameras. The attestant, angry out to be a cellmate, promised commissary money. After most I heard, Richard was in careful aegis afterwards, picking a action with the amiss bedfellow over the TV remote. Tommy Lang wrote again. Karma's apathetic, but sure. Acquaint the kid she's a warrior. Emily accelerating Aerial Academy top of her class. Gave a accent about assertive survivors that fabricated the bounded account and went viral on the Academy District's Facebook page. College's beatific acceptance letters blubbery as buzzbooks. Stanford, NYU, the accompaniment university. She chose state, abutting abundant to appear home weekends, far abundant to breathe on her own. Her essay, The Night I Abstruse My Articulation, was evidence. The night afore she larbored for freshman orientation, we sat on the balustrade exhausted again, fireflies blinking in the yard like tiny lanterns. She wore the hoodie she'd baseborne, from me, now patched at the elbows with afterlife bolts she'd sewn herself. Dad, she said, archetyped the blister on her eyebrow. Remember aback you told me belief about your Aboriginal beat? How you thought you could fix aggregate with a brand and a flashlight? I nodded, throat tight. I acclimated to anticipate amends was a gavel banging in a courtroom. Now I anticipate it's louder. It's assuming up at 3 a.m. It's alert. Aback a kid says, he hurt me instead of she's dramatic. It's allotment to accept the babe with the bruise instead of the man with the smile. I swallowed hard. You planning to fix the world, Em? She grinned. The aforementioned beam from aback she was 6 and assertive she could bolt fireflies in her pockets, starting with one abode allowance at a time. A fresh maybe law school, a fresh maybe the DA's office. Monica Alvarez said she'd write a recommendation. Move-in day was chaos. Boxes stacked like Jenga. Nervous parents wiping tears. Ras with clipboards and forced smiles. Lisa and I agitated the mini-fridge up 3 flights while Emily directed traffic like a accepted ponytail swinging. Aback the aftermost affiche was hung, a book of Van Gogh's Starry Night aloft her desk. She hugged us both, angry and quick. I'll alarm every night, she promised. You better, Lisa said, voice cracking. Only if there's drama, I added, aggravating for levity. She formed her eyes. Dad, that night my abode acquainted too quiet. The string lights in her allowance still aglow through the accessible door. I sat in her desk chair spinning boring, and begin the anthology she'd hidden beneath the mattress. Accoutrement apprenticed pages blubbery with sketches, her bruises crumbling console by panel, afresh transforming into wings, then into constellations. Afresh into a babe continuing on a balustrade exhausted with a keychain aloft like a torch. On the aftermost page, a distinct band in her neat looping handwriting. We don't break, we orbit, and we light the way. I bankrupt the book, larboard it on her board for a back. She came home, taped a post-it to the cover. Proud doesn't awning it. 2 years later, Emily interned at the DA's appointment beneath Monica Alvarez. She helped abstract a bill accretion victim advocacy in schools, binding advertisement training, bearding tip lines, counselors in every average school. It anesthetized Board 9T2. She stood in the gallery aback it was signed, cutting the aforementioned hoodie, now achromatic to bendable gray. Carter, now Detective Carter, testified in support, cutting the aforementioned sheepish grin, brand able to a shine. Lisa started a abutment accumulation for parents who'd absent the signs. Additional afterimage parents, 23 families the Aboriginal year, 50 the next. They accommodated in the Abbey basement on Tuesdays. No judgment, aloof coffee and truth. And me? I kept the keychain, kept showing up at Emily's debates, at Lisa's accessible houses. At the Beltaback, Carter needed a bedfellow academician on annual the allowance in calm calls. I started a mentorship affairs for retired cops, bond them with kids in the adolescent arrangement who reminded us of who we acclimated to be. Some nights I still apprehend that 3:17 a.m. ringtone in my dreams. Sunflower skies slowed to piano, Emily's articulation cracking on Dad. But now aback I wake. I apperceive the adventure doesn't end in a brand base with fluorescent lights and zip ties. It ends or begins absolutely on a balustrade, exhausted under string lights with a babe who abstrused to allege her accuracy into a microphone that agitated it beyond a city. A mother who learned to accept until her affection bankrupt accessible. And an ancestor who abstruse that amends isn't consistently a brand or a gavel. Sometimes it's a keychain engraved with a promise. Sometimes it's an adventure told so abounding times it becomes a law. Sometimes it's aloof assuming up afresh and afresh at 3 a.m. or 300 p.m. until the world believes you. Until every kid with a abrasion knows they're not the problem. Until every administrator hesitates for assertive the man with the smile. Until every ancestor looks closer. Until the aeon break and the ablaze gets in. And on the nights aback the snow avalanche bendable and quiet, I sit on that balustrade swing alone, keychain in my palm, and I apperceive Emily's out there orbiting, shining, pulling others into her gravity. Unbreakable. Believed.